My sister forged documents and wanted to kick me out of the house, which I had been paying for 6 years, and sued me. So, I'm Trevor Blake, 29, an IT freelancer based out of San Diego. And for 6 years, I thought I was just doing the right thing. Now I'm not so sure. Let me tell you what happened. My parents passed away unexpectedly in a car accident just over 6 years ago. It was awful, obviously, and everything after that was a blur of funeral arrangements and legal paperwork. In their will, they left the family house to me and my sister Amanda, joint ownership. We both had a claim to it, with one important condition. If either of us stopped living there or failed to contribute financially, the other could claim full ownership. Amanda and I were never super close. She's 4 years older than me, and we've always been very different. While I was studying computer science and building a freelance career, she was more the party type. Lived fast, moved to Florida, got into yacht parties and beach bar scenes. We didn't argue or anything, but our lives just didn't intersect much. After the funeral, Amanda didn't even entertain the idea of staying in San Diego. She said she couldn't handle the memories and needed to be near her support system, whatever that meant. So I moved into the house, and, to be honest, I was kind of relieved. It gave me space, stability, and somewhere to process all the grief. What Amanda didn't mention, what I didn't even think to ask at the time, was that she had no intention of contributing to the property. And I mean nothing, not a dime. Meanwhile, over the next 6 years, I poured my life into maintaining that place. The house was old, charming, but temperamental. It needed constant care. Every bill? On me. Property taxes? I paid them. New roof after a storm ripped half of it off? That was a $22,000 job. The plumbing was a nightmare, and I had to redo all the pipes last year. That was another 11 grand. Water heater blew out. Gutters collapsed. Tree roots got into the foundation. You name it. I kept track of every cent because it mattered. I even paid the homeowner's insurance, which was still listed in Amanda's name, because she never got around to switching it. And every time I brought it up, she brushed it off with, "Oh, I'll get to it. Just keep forwarding me stuff." She was living it up in Florida. I saw her Instagram stories, boats, drinks with glittery rims, pool selfies, and late-night clubbing. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I figured she'd settle down eventually, and we'd have a real conversation about the house. That conversation never came. I'd reach out occasionally, mostly about logistics. I'd say, "Hey, I need to replace the air conditioning unit. It's dying. Want to split the cost?" And she'd reply with something like, "Sorry, things are tight right now," while posting from some rooftop bar in Miami. After year 3, I stopped asking. It was always the same excuse. The thing that really started turning the gears in my head was a conversation I had with my neighbor, Pete, last summer. Pete's in his 60s, retired Navy guy, straightforward. We were standing in the driveway chatting about a plumbing issue, and I mentioned offhandedly that Amanda still owned half the place. Pete raised an eyebrow and said, "She lives in Florida, right? You ever think about just taking over full ownership? I mean, you're the only one keeping the lights on." That stuck with me. Later that night, I dug out the will. I'd seen it before, but hadn't really read it in a long time. There it was in black and white. Joint ownership unless one party ceases to reside at the property or ceases to fulfill their financial obligations, in which case the remaining party may file for full ownership through probate. I sat on that for a while. I didn't want a war. I wanted peace. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Amanda had made me her safety net. She had this big asset in her back pocket, half a house in San Diego, while I was the one paying the taxes, sweating through the repairs, and spending weekends repainting cracked walls. The straw that broke the camel's back was when I had to replace the electrical panel. Code violations. Whole thing was a fire hazard. Cost me nearly 8 grand. I sent Amanda a polite message saying, "Hey, this was urgent and needed to be done. I know you haven't been involved, but I'd really appreciate you covering at least a third of this. It's a shared property." She left me on read. 2 weeks later, she posted a picture of herself in Tulum with the caption, "Life is better when you're not broke." That was it for me. I got a lawyer. I showed him the will, the receipts, the statements, everything. Over $40,000 in documented expenses, all mine. He nodded and said, "You've got a strong case. She hasn't lived there in years. She's contributed nothing. We can start proceedings to transfer ownership." So I did. The letter went out certified mail. Amanda didn't respond. I waited. Nothing. Then one afternoon, she finally called. It had been nearly a year since we'd actually spoken on the phone. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. "You're trying to steal the house?" I took a deep breath. "Amanda, I've lived here for 6 years. You haven't contributed a single cent. I've covered everything. Every repair, every bill, even the damn insurance in your name. You don't get to ignore that and then claim ownership." She laughed. "You think a judge is just going to give you the house?" "Yes," I said. I do. She swore at me, called me selfish, ungrateful, manipulative. I didn't yell back. I just told her I'd had enough. We haven't spoken since. As of now, the probate hearing is scheduled in 2 months. My lawyer says we've got more than enough documentation. I'm not celebrating yet, but for the first time in years, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground. I never wanted this to become a fight, but I'm done being the quiet little brother who shoulders the load while someone else reaps the benefits. If that makes me selfish, so be it. The doorbell rang on a random Tuesday morning, right as I was halfway through debugging a nasty chunk of code for a freelance project that was already overdue. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured maybe it was a delivery or Pete from next door needing help with his sprinkler system again. Instead, I opened the door and there she was, Amanda. Full makeup, glossy sunglasses on top of her head, wearing some designer-looking outfit that didn't exactly scream someone drowning in debt. My stomach dropped. She didn't say hi or even offer a fake smile. She just looked me dead in the eye and said, "This is my house, and you're only here temporarily. Pack your things." I blinked. At first I thought it was a joke, or maybe she was drunk. "What are you talking about?" I asked, still holding the door open like an idiot. "Amanda, you haven't lived here in 6 years." She brushed past me like I wasn't even there, heels clacking against the hardwood floor as she walked into the living room. "You need to be out by the end of the week," she said, turning around to face me. "I'll be calling the police if you're not." I laughed, a bitter, confused laugh, thinking maybe she'd lost her mind. "You're threatening to call the cops on me? I live here. I've been living here. I pay everything. You don't even have a toothbrush in this house." She crossed her arms and tilted her head like she was the reasonable one in this conversation. "That's not my problem. I'm renting it out. Airbnb. I've already got a listing ready to go live. This place is about to start making money instead of bleeding it." I stared at her for a second, trying to process what I was hearing. "You're going to rent our parents' house on Airbnb? Without even talking to me?" She scoffed. "I don't need your permission anymore. Actually, I own the house. Full title. I submitted the transfer paperwork a few days ago. I've got the documents." Then she reached into her oversized purse and pulled out a manila folder, tossing it onto the kitchen counter like a mic drop. I opened it, and right there at the top was a supposed quitclaim deed showing that the house had been transferred into her name. There was my name, typed out neatly, and below it, a signature that was supposed to be mine. Only it wasn't. Not even close. The signature was clumsy, exaggerated, and not remotely similar to mine. I stared at it, stunned, feeling my jaw clench as the realization hit me like a truck. "Amanda, what the hell is this?" I asked, my voice low, shaking. "I never signed this. This is fraud." She didn't flinch. "Prove it. It's notarized. It's filed. You can scream all you want, but as far as the system's concerned, this house is mine, and I needed to start covering my debts." She said it like she was explaining why she'd borrowed a sweater without asking. "You've had your time here, Trevor. Now it's my turn." I couldn't believe the gall. For 6 years, I kept this place standing. I paid for every single repair, every tax bill, every insurance premium. I kept records, invoices, statements. She hadn't paid for so much as a light bulb since Mom and Dad died. And now she was trying to boot me out on a fake signature so she could make money off strangers sleeping in our childhood home. I told her straight out, "You're not going to get away with this. That signature is a forgery. I'm calling my lawyer right now." She shrugged and pulled her sunglasses back down over her eyes. "Go ahead, but you better start packing. Clock's ticking." Then she walked out, heels tapping like a slow countdown, and drove off in a white BMW with Florida plates. I stood there in the kitchen, holding the forged document, hands shaking. I knew this wasn't just some petty family argument anymore. This was a legal ambush. She was trying to rewrite reality, and if I didn't act fast, she might actually succeed. I didn't waste a second. The moment Amanda drove off, I called my lawyer, Daniel, the same guy who helped me initiate the probate petition a few months back. I told him everything. How Amanda had shown up out of nowhere claiming to own the house. How she was threatening to call the police. How she had slapped down a quitclaim deed with my forged signature on it. I didn't even finish the sentence before he cut me off and told me to come to his office first thing the next morning. I barely slept that night. I sat on the couch surrounded by folders, binders, and envelopes, digging through 6 years' worth of receipts, invoices, tax statements, and maintenance records. Every contractor invoice, every utility bill, every homeowner's insurance renewal, every damn grocery store receipt that ended up in the wrong folder. I went through all of it. When I walked into Daniel's office the next morning, I was carrying a battered banker's box stuffed with everything I could find. He didn't waste time. After I dumped the contents of the folder onto his desk, he scanned the forged quitclaim deed and immediately noticed something off with the notary's stamp. "That notary's commission expired 2 years ago," he said, tapping his pen on the document. "Let's dig deeper. By the end of the day, Daniel had uncovered the second layer of Amanda's scam. She hadn't just faked my signature. She'd forged an entire notarized power of attorney document that supposedly gave her permission to act on my behalf in all real estate matters. The notary's name was real, but the signature wasn't. The seal looked copied. Worse, the address listed for me was wrong. It was someplace in Tampa, not San Diego. I'd never even been to Tampa. It was amateur-level forgery, but if nobody questioned it, it could pass. This isn't just a property dispute anymore, Daniel said, sliding the document across his desk with a grim look. This is criminal fraud. She submitted this at the county recorder's office. Trevor, that's a felony. The legal wheels started turning fast after that. Daniel filed an emergency injunction to prevent Amanda from listing the property for rent or evicting me. He also filed a motion to reverse the title transfer and formally report the forgery to the county. Then he got to work building the real case. The one that would not only protect me from Amanda's lies, but finally get that house legally in my name once and for all. I helped where I could, but honestly, Daniel and his paralegal team did most of the heavy lifting. Within 2 weeks, they had compiled a brutal dossier of evidence. Copies of every bank transfer I'd made for utilities, property taxes, and repairs. Canceled checks for roofing contractors, plumbers, electricians, and landscapers. Dozens of postal receipts showing deliveries, insurance documents addressed only to me, and a trail of financial responsibility that stretched back to the very day I moved in. They also subpoenaed records from the state DMV and Amanda's past landlords in Florida. The result was as clear as day. Amanda had not only never lived in the San Diego house since our parents passed, she had been continuously renting apartments in Miami, Tampa, and Orlando. She had changed her voter registration to Florida years ago. Her mailing address, employment records, and tax filings all confirmed that she had zero physical connection to the house. Daniel sat me down before the first court appearance and explained the strategy. "You're not just defending against a false claim," he said. "You're asserting full ownership under California law. She hasn't lived there, she hasn't contributed, and you've maintained it entirely. That puts you in a strong position to not only reverse her fraud, but to formally claim the house." Walking into court that day, I wasn't angry, I was focused. Amanda showed up late, of course, wearing a white blouse and carrying some knockoff leather briefcase like she was about to pitch a startup. She didn't even look at me. When the judge asked her to clarify her claim of ownership, she repeated the lie, said I'd given her power of attorney because I was busy with tech work and wanted her to handle things. But the moment Daniel pulled out the side-by-side comparisons, my actual signature from tax documents and contracts, and the shaky, mismatched one on the forged deed, the room shifted. Then he pulled out a photo of Amanda tagged at a bar in Key West the same day she claimed to have met with me in San Diego to sign the paperwork. That got the judge's eyebrows up. The final blow came when Daniel played a voicemail Amanda had left on my phone, recorded the day she showed up at the house. "This is my house, and you're only here temporarily. Pack your things." Combined with the paper trail showing I'd paid over 40 grand to keep the place livable and the complete absence of any financial input from her side, it wasn't even a close call. The judge issued a preliminary ruling that Amanda's documents were inconsistent, likely fraudulent, and not credible. He froze any action she could take with the property, ordered the title reversed to reflect its previous state, and scheduled a full hearing to determine sole ownership. I walked out of that courthouse with a fire in my chest. I wasn't just defending myself anymore, I was winning. The law was finally on my side. And Amanda, who thought she could waltz in, throw around some fake papers, and bully me out of my own home, was realizing this wasn't going to be as easy as she thought. The morning of the final hearing, the courtroom was quiet in that tense, almost sacred way that makes every shuffle of papers sound like thunder. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Daniel, dressed in a plain gray suit that still smelled faintly of dry cleaner starch. Across from us, Amanda strolled in 15 minutes late with some new lawyer at her side, a guy who looked like he belonged in a daytime soap opera. Slicked hair, too much cologne, and a smug confidence that didn't match the pile of lies they were walking in with. Amanda didn't even glance at me. She was all composed and performative, as if the last few weeks hadn't happened, like she hadn't committed fraud or tried to kick me out of my own house. When the judge took the bench, he adjusted his glasses, glanced through the stack of motions and statements in front of him, and then invited Amanda's side to present their new position. Her lawyer stood up with that fake courtroom politeness and said, "Your Honor, my client asserts that Mr. Blake has never been a legal co-owner of the home in question. He was, at most, a lodger, granted temporary residence following the passing of their parents. Ms. Blake has always retained authority over the property and simply delayed enforcement of her rights out of familial generosity. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lodger? For 6 years? Living in my own family home, paying every bill, fixing every leak, and suddenly I was downgraded to a glorified couch surfer? The judge looked up, eyes narrowing slightly. Counselor, do you have any documentation, any payment records, contracts, agreements, or correspondences that support your client's claim of sole ownership or any evidence that Mr. Blake was permitted to live there as a tenant or lodger? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably and looked at Amanda. She gave a tiny shrug and muttered something to him, but neither of them had anything to show. The courtroom fell into an awkward silence, and then Daniel stood, calm as ever, and began walking the judge through our stack of evidence for the third time. Bank transfers with my name on them, spanning 6 years. Checks addressed to utility companies, roofing contractors, and the city's tax office. Maintenance records, home insurance policies, all in my name, all paid from my accounts. We showed photos, time-stamped emails, and even old text messages between Amanda and me where she casually acknowledged that she was glad I was taking care of the house since she couldn't deal with it. Then came the residency evidence. DMV records, voter registration, state tax returns, all showing Amanda had been a Florida resident since just after our parents passed away. She hadn't spent more than a few days in San Diego in 6 years. And the forged power of attorney? Already under investigation. It dragged on through 2 more hearings. Amanda's side kept shifting their narrative, first insisting I'd never lived there long-term, then claiming I'd agreed to take care of the house in exchange for rent-free benefits. Every version contradicted the last. Each time the judge asked for proof, Amanda came up empty-handed. By the third hearing, you could feel the change in the room. Even the clerk looked like she was tired of Amanda's performance. The judge asked a final round of questions, then announced he would deliver his ruling after a short recess. When court resumed, the room felt heavier than before. The judge adjusted his glasses again, looked directly at Amanda, and then turned to me. In the matter of Blake versus Blake, he said, his voice firm but even, the court finds that Mr. Trevor Blake has provided overwhelming and consistent evidence of financial responsibility, residence, and maintenance of the property in question for a continuous period of 6 years. Ms. Amanda Blake has failed to produce any documentation to support her claim of ownership, nor has she demonstrated any legal right to act on behalf of Mr. Blake during that time. He paused, and I swear my heart stopped beating for a moment. Accordingly, this court grants full ownership of the property located at the San Diego address to Mr. Trevor Blake. The fraudulent documents submitted by Ms. Amanda Blake are to be referred to the appropriate authorities for further investigation. Furthermore, due to the repeated harassment and threats made against Mr. Blake, Ms. Blake is hereby prohibited from approaching within 100 meters of the property. I didn't even move. I sat there frozen in my chair, staring at the judge, absorbing the words like they were filtering in through water. Amanda stood still too, jaw slightly open, like she'd just been slapped across the face in front of a crowd. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered something, but she didn't respond. She just grabbed her purse and walked out of the courtroom without a word, her heels echoing down the hallway. Daniel leaned over and clapped me lightly on the back. "You did it," he said. "It's over." I nodded, slowly, still trying to believe it. After 6 years of shouldering everything and nearly losing the one place that still felt like home, the court had finally put it in writing. The house was mine. Not shared, not disputed. Mine. And Amanda? She couldn't even set foot on the street without risking jail time. The phone call came 2 weeks after the final hearing. It was Detective Halvorsen from the San Diego Financial Crimes Unit. His tone was neutral, professional, but there was something about the way he asked me to come down to the station that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I asked him if it had to do with the forged quitclaim deed Amanda had submitted, and he just said, "It's a bit bigger than that." When I got there, they led me to a small room, not an interrogation room exactly, but it had that same sterile vibe. Halvorsen came in with a thick file and placed it on the table between us. I could see my name printed across the tab. He started slow. First, he confirmed what we already knew. Amanda had forged the notarized power of attorney, forged my signature on real estate documents, and illegally transferred the deed into her name. That part had already come out in court. But then he said they'd expanded the investigation when inconsistencies popped up in her bank records, and what they uncovered went way beyond property fraud. He flipped open the file and showed me a copy of a credit application, one I had never seen before. It listed my name, my current San Diego address, and what looked like my social security number. Except it wasn't mine. Not exactly. It was off by a digit, but close enough to slide through certain systems. According to Halvorsen, Amanda had used this slightly altered number to apply for and receive multiple lines of credit from different lenders. Some were personal loans, some were store cards, and one was a small business loan under a fake LLC that listed me as the owner. Altogether, they calculated over $70,000 in fraudulent debt attached to my name or slight variants of it. The loans had been slowly accumulating for nearly 2 years. She'd been making minimum payments on some accounts just to keep the creditors quiet while pulling cash advances and laundering funds through short-term dummy accounts. According to bank surveillance footage, she'd withdrawn money in person at several Florida branches, using a fake ID with my name and her photo. I sat there stunned while Halvorson laid it all out, page by page. He explained how she'd gotten access to a partial copy of my old Social Security card, something my parents had probably kept in a family file back when Amanda still had access to the house. She used that to fabricate documents, verify addresses, and fool lenders into thinking she had legal authority to act on my behalf. She even listed her own phone number as the contact for me, which explained why I'd never received calls or alerts about any of it. She had created a digital footprint, crafted from half-truths and fabricated paperwork, and managed to pull off a miniature identity theft operation right under my nose. The moment that hit me, I felt sick. Not just because of the money, though that was bad enough, but because it was my own sister. Someone I grew up with. Someone who stood next to me at our parents' funeral and pretended like we were still family. She hadn't just tried to steal the house. She had hijacked my identity piece by piece, monetized it, and treated me like a walking ATM she could rob in slow motion. Halvorson closed the file and looked at me calmly. We're forwarding this to the district attorney's office. It's being classified as a large-scale financial fraud case. Multiple felonies, wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, falsifying public records, and potentially bank fraud, depending on how the federal agencies respond. It felt surreal, like I was watching it happen to someone else. A few months ago, I thought the worst thing Amanda could do was ignore the water bill. Now I was sitting across from a detective listing off federal charges with my name buried underneath piles of false paperwork. I asked what would happen next. Halvorson said the DA was moving fast. Because Amanda had crossed state lines with the money and used multiple institutions, the case was likely heading to the Superior Court first, and possibly further, depending on federal interest. He also said they'd already issued a warrant and were working with local authorities in Florida to track her down. When I walked out of the station, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow, like someone had scraped the last of the trust one had left out of my chest and replaced it with silence. $70,000. Fake names. Forged numbers. A house almost stolen. And all of it carried out by someone who used to sit across from me at the dinner table. I didn't expect the courtroom to be packed when I walked in for Amanda's sentencing, but the place was nearly full. A row of reporters had taken over the back corner, scribbling in notepads and tapping away on laptops. 2 of them had camera crews outside. I saw a mic with the local news logo on it, and someone from a national outlet in the hallway interviewing people who didn't even know Amanda. It was surreal watching my personal nightmare turn into some public spectacle. Apparently, the case had gone viral after a Reddit post, /legal advice blew up. Someone had shared a timeline of the forged deed, the identity theft, and the credit fraud, and people couldn't believe how far it had gone. The post hit the front page, and suddenly we were the courtroom drama of the week. Amanda came in flanked by her attorney and a guard, wearing a dark blazer that looked borrowed and makeup that couldn't cover how tired she looked. She barely glanced at me. The energy in the room shifted when the judge entered. He went straight into the summary, no drawn-out speech or slow build. The evidence was overwhelming, he said, and the prosecution had proven beyond a doubt that Amanda had engaged in an organized effort to defraud me, falsify legal documents, and exploit my personal information for financial gain. The judge listed the charges one by one, and hearing them aloud felt heavier than I expected. Count 1. Fraud, specifically related to the forged real estate documents and the attempted theft of the property. Count 2. Forgery of documents, including the fake power of attorney and the false quitclaim deed. Count 3. Illegal use of personal identifying information, using my social security number and name to apply for credit and loans totaling over $70,000. When the guilty verdict was read on all 3 counts, Amanda didn't react. She sat perfectly still, face blank, like she had disconnected from the moment. Her lawyer tried to make a case for leniency, citing mental health issues, financial desperation, and lack of prior convictions. But the judge wasn't buying it. He acknowledged that Amanda had no previous criminal record but pointed out that the scale and planning involved in her actions showed clear intent and a disregard for the law and the damage done to another person, namely me. Then came the sentencing. 3 years in state prison, with the possibility of early release after 20 months based on behavior and program participation. The room was silent for a few seconds after he said it. Like everyone needed a second to process that Amanda was actually going to prison. Not probation. Not house arrest. Real prison. As soon as the gavel came down, the room buzzed to life. Reporters rushed to the hallway. Someone snapped a photo of me as I stood to leave, though I didn't stop or acknowledge them. Amanda was led away in handcuffs, silent. No outburst, no apology, no last words. Just the sound of the doors shutting behind her as they took her down the corridor. Outside, people were already talking. Someone asked if I wanted to make a statement, but I kept walking. I wasn't there for headlines or Reddit clout. I just wanted it to be over. And now, finally, it was. After the sentencing, the house felt different. Not quieter, not emptier, just lighter. Like something toxic had finally been bled out of the walls. I didn't celebrate, not in any dramatic way. I didn't throw a party or post some triumphant message online. What I did was simple. I opened my old crypto wallet, liquidated a portion of what I'd been sitting on since 2017, and started making changes. For the first time in years, I put money into the house not just to keep it functioning, but to make it mine in every sense. I tore out the old kitchen and replaced it with a sleek, modern design, matte black cabinets, soft close everything, and a countertop that didn't wobble if you leaned on it. I installed a full smart home system, lights that adjusted to my schedule, thermostats I could control from my phone, a security system with facial recognition, and blinds that rose with the sun. I even soundproofed my home office and finally built the dual monitor setup I had been dreaming about since college. No more patching holes. No more second-guessing repairs because I didn't know if the house would still be mine. Now it was, without question. A few months later, someone reached out from a YouTube channel that animated real-life legal dramas. They said they'd seen the Reddit threads, followed the public court filings, and wanted to turn my story into an episode. I gave them permission on the condition they didn't use my full name or show my face. They agreed. A month later, it dropped. 8 minutes of stylized animation retelling the whole saga, right down to Amanda forging documents and trying to Airbnb the place while claiming I was a guest. It blew up fast. The comment section was flooded with people saying it felt like a movie. Amanda saw it, I'm sure. Maybe someone in prison showed it to her. Not long after it posted, I got my first letter. Handwritten, addressed in careful block print, with her prison ID in the top corner. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I recognized the handwriting, and just seeing it made my stomach turn. She sent 3 more over the next couple of months. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't interested in apologies, explanations, or whatever version of the story she was trying to rewrite.